Hey, this is Maya, and you're listening to The Brad Gilmore Show.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bruce Buffer, and you're listening to the main event of podcasts. First, fighting out of the blue corner, Brad Gilmore. And now, it's time.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the one and the only, the Brad Gilmore Show. We have a great show for you today, the one and the only. I'm excited about this. You know, we've had a good run as of late. I think over the last year, we've had some great interviews. I've got to talk to a lot of people I never thought I'd have the opportunity of speaking with. And today is no different. Today, on the Brad Gilmore Show on Demand, we have the one and the only, the voice of the Octagon. You know, there's POTUS, right, which is President of the United States, right? There's only one, and there's been 44 different men who've held that distinction of being POTUS. There's only one man in the history of the world who's had the distinction of being called the Voto, and that is the voice of the Octagon. He joins us on the show today. He is Mr. Bruce Buffer. Bruce Buffer, of course, the long-tenured ring announcer of UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. If you're a fan of mixed martial arts, the name is synonymous, really, with the sport. When you think Bruce Buffer, you think of the UFC. You think of it's time, right? And I reached out to Bruce. I've had some contact with him over the last couple of years, and I reached out to him and said, hey, would you come on the podcast? He said, love to. So we set it up, and we talked for, I think, for about 20 minutes. You know, he's a busy guy. Bruce Buffer is a busy man. So he was gracious enough to make a little bit of time for me, 20 minutes out of his day. And you know what I thought about this when I was doing this episode with Bruce? I was like, man, you know, time really is a crazy currency. I mean, it's the only currency we really have. The only thing we really have is time. Nothing lasts forever, of course, so our time is finite. And to be able to have the opportunity and to be blessed with the opportunity of getting to spend time with people like Bruce Buffer or Jack from Theme Park History, Aaron, or anybody I've had on the show as of late, you know, it really is an honor. It is. And I'm very excited about some of the other guests that we have coming up here on the Brad Gilmore Show. I've been booking like crazy. So I'm looking to get some big names on here for this show and for all kinds of stuff. You know, to have Phil Hellmuth on the show, Chris Moneymaker, Michael Rappaport, Booker, all these guys to come bless me with a little bit of time really is awesome. So I enjoyed this talk with Bruce, and I tell a story on here, and I'm going to go into the full thing right now. I'll tell the beginning of it, and I'll finish the conclusion when we bring Bruce on, but it's now going on 6 years ago in November or October, late October, early November of 2012. I was scrolling through, you know, I woke up in the morning like I do every morning, and I was scrolling through Twitter, and I saw a tweet from something from wrestling. I think it was from WWE. I think I followed WWE on Twitter. Now, I'm a lifelong fan, but at the time, I did not watch wrestling for a good number of years. I want to say from probably 2008 to 2012, I was out. So that 4-year span, I just didn't follow it. I watched WrestleMania every year, and every year I'd be like, who the hell are these people? I don't recognize any of these names. So I kind of fell out of love with wrestling for a little while. And I guess, you know, a lot of that's high school and, you know, fraternizing with females, and wrestling really just didn't, and I was heavy into my music, so I didn't really focus on wrestling. And 2012 came around, I was scrolling on Twitter, woke up Saturday morning, scrolling through, I was doing online radio at the time, and I saw a tweet from WWE, so I click on that. I'm like, oh man, wrestling, I wonder what's going on. And then from there, they had tweeted something from Booker T, who was the acting SmackDown general manager, I believe, at the time. So I was like, oh man, Booker T. I remember Booker T. My first wrestling event ever went to, Booker T was in the main event. My first 2 wrestling events I ever went to, Booker T was in the main event working for the world title. So that tells you something. But I I was like, okay, let me see what's going on with Book. So I click on his thing, and I was like, oh, wow, Booker has a school in Houston, a wrestling school? I didn't know that. And then I see that they're looking for a ring announcer. I was like, oh, that's cool. That would be fun to do a ring to be a ring announcer for professional wrestling. So I click on the link to the school's website, Reality of Wrestling. I'd never heard of it. And there was an email address saying, email Paul Cook your information. So I emailed Paul Cook. I must have been one of only like 2 people to do this. I don't know why, but I got a call 3 weeks later. I was going to go do an interview promoting my band's new album, 2011, 20 Summers, which 5th year anniversary just passed of that album, so shout out. But we were promoting the album, and I got like I said, I got a call from Paul Cook, and he said, hey, is this Brad Gilmore? I said, yeah, sure is. He said, can you come down to wrestling school? We'd like to talk to you about being a ring announcer for Booker T's Reality Wrestling. And so I went down and met with Paul and Kevin Bernhardt at the time, and Booker wasn't there. This was on a Tuesday. I got a call on a Thursday. Hey, can you come down to the school tonight? Booker T would like to meet you. Awesome. Go down there and meet Booker. The first thing Booker T ever told me was I was a good-looking kid. I'll never forget that. And I remember looking at him like, oh, yeah, I appreciate that, Book. And it was kind of like this, it felt like I already knew him, you know? So anyway, he goes, have you ever done ring announcing before? I was like, no, but I've done some announcing, which wasn't true either. But I've been doing online radio, so I thought, okay, obviously this is, I'm in broadcasting in some sort of way. At least I thought I was. I was 19. And Booker was like, okay, well, we got a show this Saturday. Can you be there? Absolutely. So I got there Saturday, and I remember being given the card, and Kevin Bernhardt said, yeah, go up to all these people. Or I think Paul Cook said, go up to all these people and ask them their height, weight, or their weight in hometown, and write them down on some index cards, go out there, and hopefully you do a good job. And that was the really all the advice I was given. So then I remember it was bell time. I was told by Paul, all right, you're up. It's time to go out there. I walk to the ring and get in the ring, and I'm going to finish that story with Bruce Buffer right now on the Brad Gilmore Show on Demand. Special guest joining me on the show right now, the Voto, the voice of the Octagon, Bruce Buffer joins me on the Brad Gilmore Show. Bruce, how you doing?
I'm good, Brad. How are you?
I am excited. I'm excited to talk to you. I've wanted to, have you on the show for a long time for a multitude of reasons, and chief of which being this. I got my start in pro wrestling in 2012. And
right.
I got my start with a guy named Booker T, WWE Hall of Famer. Back in the WCW days, y'all might have rubbed shoulders. But
know Booker T very well.
Yes, so Booker gave me my start, and he just donned me the ring announcer. I had not done any ring announcing ever in my life before, but when he said, can you do it, I said absolutely, like anybody in entertainment would, right? So I go out there on my first night. I'm live in front of about 300 people. Cameras are on, lights are on, and the only thing in my head that I'm saying to myself is sound like Bruce Buffer. Sound like Bruce Buffer. That was my mantra. If I was doing transcendental meditation, that would be my mantra, was to sound like Bruce Buffer, and I've been with him ever since. So I think that you've kind of helped me secure my job position with Booker T for all of these years, so I got to thank you for that.
I'm very, very honored by that. And Booker T's a great guy. I used to go to the WCW shows when Michael Buffer, my legendary announcing brother, known for the Let's Get Ready to Rumble, was the announcer at WCW. And I'm Michael's manager. And I had the pleasure of being at many of those shows backstage and watching Booker and T and Hulk and Macho Man all do their thing. To me, that was like the glory days of wrestling. It was amazing back then.
Oh, it was the best time. You know what? I'm shocked. I actually talked to somebody who worked for WWF at the time, and they said that there were some offers made to you to be a ring announcer for WWE. Was that true?
No, the WWE never came at me. If anything, I had my brother Michael do like a commercial for them and one other thing. I'd heard scuttlebutt, like Paul Heyman has said to me for a long time he'd love to see me come in and do a bit at the WWE. like do a bit with me, actually, if we ever got it together. But that's about as close as I've come. I've never been on a bargaining table with the WWE, so no formal offers ever come through. If they thought about it, again, like you saying what you said, I'm honored.
Well, yeah, I think it'd be great. You have it's kind of crazy to me, Bruce, that you have like you said, this legendary brother Michael Buffer. Let's get ready to rumble. Everybody in the world knows that. You didn't meet your brother, and he's your half brother. Y'all didn't meet until what, 1989, 1990, somewhere around there.
Yeah, right around 89. I was around 28, 29 years old, and I saw Michael on TV doing his thing when boxing was the water cooler conversation, on a Monday at the office, and kind of the way big UFCs are now. And it was so big back then, pretty much everybody was watching boxing. And when Michael came on the screen, they put his name on, Michael Buffer. And I owned telemarketing companies in my 20s. I never saw my name in a phone book. This is pre-internet when we actually worked out of phone books. And when I saw his name on the screen and looking at this, very handsome, debonair James Bond style guy doing his thing, which really brought attention to the ring announcer, I like a light bulb went off my head. Who is this guy? And long story cut short, over the course of a year, people would stop me saying, "Is that your brother?" The guy that goes, "Let's get ready to rumble." And I go, "No, my brother's named Brian, the brother I grew up with all my life." And I talked to my dad, and I found out that my dad was married briefly during the World War II, and when he went over to the Pacific to serve in World War II. And after 9 months, he came back, and then a son had been born, and it turned out to be Michael Buffer. And Michael was raised by foster parents. The last time they saw each other was when he was 2.5. And so Michael was doing a fight in California and had my dad call the venue, and Michael called him back, and they got together for lunch, and it turned out to be his son. And then we got together, and very short period of time later, say 3 years or so, I sold 2 companies. I was doing fantastic, but I was burned out on what I was doing. And I rolled the dice. I quit with the money I had in the bank, became Michael's manager and business partner, and trademarked the phrase, and the rest is pretty much history from all you've seen happen over the last 25 years.
So he's your half brother. You meet him in '89. You'll start to trademark. You're being his business manager. You're backstage at WCW. When was the light bulb? When did the light bulb go off and say, you know what? Why don't I follow in my brother's footsteps and let me step into the Octagon, or let me step into the ring and be an announcer?
Well, my job as a manager to my client, to my partner, is to get him in all the big events that happen in the world. That was my goal, is to take Michael, keep him in the boxing ring, but put him in the basketball courts, the football fields, any big event that came around. And when the UFC came around, it was the fastest growing pay-per-view on TV. So I called the owners, cold called them, got Michael a 3-fight gig contract. First time he came out, he said, if it's not in the Octagon, it's not real. And I knew I was going to get a call from the WCW on Monday, because back then they wanted everybody to believe when Hulk Hogan punched you 20 times in the face that it was real.
Right.
But we all know if it was real, your face would be mashed potatoes.
Right.
So with that being said, in all respect to the wrestling, we had a huge contract with WCW, and obviously, the choice was obvious, and Michael could not have continued at the pace the UFC grew. So we did the 3 fights. He did the 3 fights. And then I told the UFC, I said, listen, you need a buffer in the Octagon. I've got tremendous media contacts from everything I've been doing, over the last number of years. And I'll help you build a sport, because I've been a martial artist since I was 12, got, black belts, and I've fought, amateur wise or smoker wise myself many times. And I feel that I can grow, and I want to grow with you as the organization and help you build the brand, but I've got to be the announcer. So it kind of fell on deaf ears. So then what I did is I got a videotape sent to me by this monster fighter named Scott the Pitbull Ferrazzo, 340-pound, arms down to his ankles, kind of guy, a great guy and a very strong fighter. So I got him a gig with UFC 6 in Bayamon, Puerto Rico, and they fly the manager down. So my whole goal was, I called the owner. I said, listen, I'm coming down with my fighter. I've got a tuxedo in my bag. Let me announce the prelims, show you what I got, and let's get going here. Let's build this. So I did announce the prelims, and then they didn't call me back for the next show. And then I got a phone call when I was in the hospital with my mother, when she had just had a very serious operation. And my cell phone rings, and it's the UFC saying, listen, we need you in Alabama in 2 days. The announcer can't make it. We want you to do the whole show. Can you be here? And my mother gave me a thumbs up, like Rocky's wife, from the bed, like, get out there and fight. And she said, go, you got to go. And I went, and I did the whole show, thought I did a good job, and said, hey guys, let's get to work here. And lo and behold, they hired somebody else for the next couple of shows. And then they called me to do Friends, the Ultimate Fighting Championship show on Friends. It was episode number 23. And Warner Brothers wanted me to do the show. They wanted to have the real announcer, and they got tape and video of me, and they said, we want Bruce to co-star as himself on the show. So the owner called me and told me that, and I said, you know what? Fine, but you better meet me on the set. I need to talk to you at lunch. So I met him at lunch on the day of rehearsal, and I said, look, Robert, that was his name, Robert Meyerowitz. I said, listen, I feel like a girl waiting for a date to the prom. And quite frankly, this is the last time I'm going to ask. It's been 1.5 years now. I need to be the announcer. I need to grow with you. And that way I can help you build this sport and do what I can do, on my part, my own little niche. And that was the best poker hand I ever played. And I started announcing every single show. I've been doing it for 23 years.
I mean, it's probably one of the most incredible rides that you like you said, you're working, you owned your own businesses in your 20s, and you probably would have never thought, I'm going to travel the entire world in a sport too at the time that was still looked at like, I don't know about this. And now it's turned into a multi-billion-dollar, industry that's being televised by Mickey Mouse now, coming up. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy, the career trajectory. But you talk about, again, though, your brother, let's get ready to rumble. I said it, a phrase that everybody knows. But now everybody also knows it's time. And you've branded It's Time, It's Time Radio, which I want to talk to you about in a second. But where does It's Time come from? Because I have a buddy who actually worked with me in Booker T, Jeremiah Gallegos, who's now the ring announcer for Golden Boy. And I remember him sitting there one day, and we're talking, and he's like, I got to come up with my It's Time. I got to figure it out. It's now like the benchmark that ring announcers go by. They got to get their catchphrase. Where did It's Time come from?
Yeah, I agree. Was that Joe Martinez you were talking about?
Jeremiah Gallegos. He's the new ring announcer for Golden Boy.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. In the beginning of the show, I used to walk out and I would say, well, first off, let me say this. Michael Buffer, to me, is the legendary greatest announcer of all time. And he put the focus on the ring announcer for all of the ring announcers to, be a little more noticeable. Absolutely. Depending on their style. So I told myself I never wanted to be Frank Sinatra Jr. Okay, I wasn't interested. I set a goal and I said, listen, I'm going to do this. And if in the second to third year I have not developed my own style that I'm distinctly known for, then I'm going to let it go. I'm going to walk away. It's just the way I am. So I went out and I was not phrase driven. I didn't feel you needed to have a phrase. To me, it's not what I say, it's how I say it, right? Because I put my body, my passion, my heart, my soul into my announcing.
Right.
And the moment I find myself phoning it in, then I'm going to retire because I can't travel the world throwing a tuxedo in a bag, 35, 40 times a year and not enjoy it and be the kid in the candy store that I love to be when I work. I have a very different attitude, I would say, than probably most announcers out there in the way I approach it. I approach it like an event. Each show to me is like a performance that I need to get in shape for. And I have routines, the whole bit. And I've not changed that pattern of thought for 23 years that I've been doing this. So when I got in, what happened is eventually I used to say at the beginning, it's time to begin the ultimate fighting championship. I did that at the opening of the show. And when I got to the main event, after a number of years, I realized, hey, the fans have been sitting here for 6 hours. The fighter's been training for 6 to 8 weeks or more. It's now culminated in this main event, this moment, and it's time. This is the time for everybody to prove themselves. And I had a habit every morning shaving or, when I start my day, looking in the mirror and saying, it's time. And I realized I've been doing that for years. So I incorporated It's Time into my main event announcement. And the evolutionary process that takes place, it just organically grew. And I'm very proud of it. And thank you for what you said, about people knowing it. I take great pride in it. And I've trademarked it, and it's being marketed in many different ways. Like you said, it's become very popular, and I'm just very honored that people pay attention and like it.
I mean, it is crazy, though, for both brothers to have these iconic phrases. I mean, I remember the Budweiser. It was a Budweiser commercial or a Bud Light commercial that had the It's Time in, right? I mean, and it's been one of the – here's the crazy thing, Bruce, is there's nothing that gets me more pumped up when I'm sitting there watching, the UFC, when the main event comes on. Because it's become a performance. Like your build-up for the main event intros – is a part of the main event now. And if the main event doesn't have it, it doesn't feel as special. It is crazy. Like you said, it is a performance.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. People, it's like we are announcers, ring announcers, but I consider myself, like you said, and thank you for that, a performer. And it's, I used to watch, some of the emphasis came from like the 80s and the 70s when I used to go to these and 90s, I go to these great rock concerts, right? And I watch the main singer, whether it's Steven Tyler or Rod Stewart, and the way they would command the stage and the way they would perform and do their thing, or even look at Elvis when he did his little, turn or something like that.
Right.
It's not show business, it's show biz, right? And it's all about creating the entertainment value. And the show is not about me by any standards whatsoever. I am there to enhance the moment for that warrior in front of me, male or female, and for the great fans of MMA and the UFC that are watching. And that's what my job is, and that's all it is. And I just happen to take great pride, and I love my job. I love who I work for. And you're right. It's been an amazing rocket ship ride upward for 23 years. I mean, the UFC just sold for $4.2 billion. And I heard because of the ESPN deal, Mickey Mouse, like you said, that they're valuing it somewhere close to $7 billion now. That's only 2 years after it's sold. It's unbelievable.
It's one of the best success stories, I think, in the history of American business. The UFC, really.
Right.
When you look at not just sports, not just entertainment, like when you look at business, I don't know if there's been any business that's been able to grow as fast as that. Especially it's not a tech company or anything like that. It's grown exponentially.
You're absolutely correct. And as a result, we have fighters out there. And you hear people complain, oh, the UFC doesn't pay. And that's crap. The UFC pays very well. I mean, in MMA, I remember guys like, the great Rampage, Quentin Rampage Jackson, right? I used to announce him at King of the Cage, this other event where he used to make $500 a fight when he started. And in the end, he made like well over $10 million in his last reign with the UFC. And I think that's incredible, and then fighters that start the fight on the undercards, if I'm not mistaken, they're guaranteed, I think, $10,000 a show and $10,000 if they win. And if you look at boxing undercards or the other MMA shows out there, the undercard fighters don't make anywhere near that. And then you have people like Conor McGregor, who's broken the bank with his earnings because of, the tension he brings to the show. You've got people like Nate Diaz, who was making $100,000 or a nice amount of money for his fights and get to fight Conor, and suddenly now he's making millions of dollars. And George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva. I mean, they've created.
Yeah.
And Brock was a millionaire before he ever came in, but
that's true.
They've created avenues for the fighters that have become, I think easily, they probably created about anywhere from 50 to 100 millionaires, and I want all the fighters. I wish every fighter made $1 million. You're putting your blood, sweat, and tears in your life on the line. You deserve it. So they've really created a path. They've also been the rocket ship that has created the pathway for all the other MMA events out there, whether it's Bellator or the smaller events or the King of the Cages, to follow in that path and be able to be successful themselves. So it's like the NFL. You've got the NFL. When you're in the NFL, you shouldn't go anywhere else. You want to stay in the NFL. But there's a CFL and there's all the other leagues underneath. And that's what the NFL has created, and has created this whole genre, this whole business. So long story cut short, what we've seen is we've actually seen a sport. Now, when was the last time in your lifetime, much less mine, maybe skateboarding, but when is the last time you've ever seen a sport created and watched it grow to be the mega success that it is? And that's what the UFC has done.
It just hasn't happened. I even think skateboarding had a peak, but and then it went kind of away. I mean, it's still there, but it's not what it was with the Tony Hawk Pro Skater video games and everything in the early 2000s. But the UFC has continued to grow and has not stopped growing since its inception. I mean, it's just incredible. It's like I said, there's nothing really like it. It's, like you said, especially in my lifetime or yours, it's second to none. WWE's up there with it, obviously, but
Oh, absolutely. No, I give huge credit to Vince McMahon and everything going on in the WWE. I'm so proud to see Ronda doing what she loves, doing it so well in the WWE and making the mark for herself. Just getting the belt recently. Yeah, it's just an amazing thing. It really is. And, a lot of this, if anything, we were, again, on the outs, and John McCain, my condolences and best wishes go to his family and loved ones. But John McCain was one of the key reasons, even though he got the UFC taken off the air on In Demand with, claiming it was human cockfighting back then. But then he changed his tune, and that political inroad that he created actually, I think, benefited the UFC in the long run, helping it grow to where it got to, because when Dana White and the Fertitta brothers took it over, it was a failing organization. They bought it for $2 million. And thank you, Dana White. I mentally bow to Dana, just out of respect, like you do in a dojo when you walk on the mat, saying, Dana, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for how you've done this. Thanks for my job, And now we have WME and Ari Emanuel and Patrick Whitesell behind it. And which is probably the largest, most powerful media company in the world, or one of them. So somebody's doing something right. They're doing something right.
Or at least they're getting enough right to continue to grow. There's always going to be missteps, but they're doing enough right. We're already a little bit over on time, but I just got one more for you. Just overall, the last time we saw the now famous, you do the Buffer 180. Right. Of course, which is a trademark of yours. We've only seen the Buffer 360 one time, I believe. Is that correct? Only one time.
That's absolutely right.
The last time we saw it, Brock Lesnar was fighting defending the UFC Heavyweight Championship, and Brock now is coming back. He's going to be fighting DC for the UFC Heavyweight Championship. Real quick, your pick for that fight, and is there any chance we can see the Buffer 360?
The Buffer, okay, my pick for that fight is what I always answer. I can always talk to you about how it's written on paper and the styles, but I'm always made the best man win because I'm an equal opportunity announcer. I don't bet fights, and I want to get in there and give each warrior, male or female, everything I have to get them ready for that moment. The Buffer 360 was something that happened over a push on the internet and Joe Rogan pushing me and everybody. And I realized at that moment, that night when I was in the Octagon, I told everybody, listen, I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to tell you when. You won't know. And Joe thought I wasn't going to do it, but I was purposely waiting for Brock. And when I turned out of the corner after I announced Frank Mir's opponent, I said to myself mentally, I said, I better pull this off or I'm going to be the joke of the internet on Monday morning.
Right. Absolutely. You'd have been a meme everywhere.
Exactly. So I went into Brock and I gave him the intro and I leaned down a little bit and I said, Brock. And then I jumped in the air and spun the 360 and landed. And it was perfect. I landed perfect. It's like a gymnast. I go, oh, I nailed it. I got the landing.
Right.
And then I shoved my card in front of his face and roared Lesnar, and he jumped his hands up in front of me. And it's like a screenwriter could not have written a scene more perfectly. And I got back to my seat and I thought to myself, mission accomplished. But at the same time, to keep that in the minds of people, great moments in life, whether it's sports or politics or life in general, do it once. Don't do it again.
Right.
Do it once. It's done.
Yeah.
One and done. And quite frankly, and then people want me to do 720s and 540s, and I'm like, I'm not a gymnast, I mean, I'm athletic. I've been an athlete my whole life, but I'm 61 years old. I'm not going to be doing backflips,
Yeah, give me a break. Okay, well, I felt like I had to ask because it is so memorable, and you did it now over 120 UFC shows ago, and I still remember it to this day. But this is Bruce Buffer. It's Time Radio is available where and when?
It's Time Radio is my podcast. I've had it for 10 years, Lifestyles podcast. I have actors, sports stars. I rant, I rave. I'm on the Revolver Network, which is on the internet, but you can find it on iTunes, of course. And there's many other areas out there that carry It's Time. But just go to iTunes, look up Bruce Buffer, It's Time podcast, or just Google Bruce Buffer, It's Time podcast. Or here's another thing. May I say this for a second?
Go ahead.
The fans out there, including wrestling fans that write me, I offer for a very reasonable price championship introductions, like you're being introduced in the Octagon like a champion. I do them on audio. I used to get paid hundreds of dollars for this. I just charge $99 because I get part of the proceeds to animal, military, and children charities. And videos are a little more. I do weddings, birth of babies, corporate events, professional NFL football teams. If you ever have any needs for videos or audios, just write me through brucebuffer.com. My office will answer. But if you're an MMA fan or a wrestling fan and you want to get a rousing introduction, that championship introduction, I'm so happy to do this because my partner and I, we get all these thank you notes that come in, right? And she'll send them to me, and it's like it almost brings tears to our eyes how happy we're making people, and that's why I like to keep it reasonable, and of course, give to the charities that I mentioned too, so everybody benefits from everything.
And you can do that on brucebuffer.com. Follow him on Twitter at Bruce Buffer. Bruce, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope we stay in contact, and then I'll talk to you again soon.
Oh, thanks very much. No, it is a pleasure for me too. I wish you all the best. Please give Booker T my best.
I will.
Love watching Booker T do his thing when I was back there backstage. Man, that guy gave his all.
We got to get you on the show with Booker too. I think that he would love to speak with you soon too, because he's the biggest UFC junkie in the world. So I'm sure there'd be much to talk about.
Invite me back anytime, Brad.
All right, I appreciate it, Bruce. That's Bruce Buffer, everybody. We'll be right back.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?